Evening, one and all. Welcome to the Chris Salcedo Show Worldwide here on the Vida Television Network, and happy Thanksgiving to one and all. Look, let me start out right off the bat by saying I can't thank you enough for spending a little bit of your holiday with us here on the Chris Salcedo Show Worldwide and the Vida Television Network. I am honored and humbled beyond belief that you'd choose to tune into this program and maybe have some of your family members watch as well. So, bottom of my heart, thank you very much. I'm going to do something a little different on this program, focus on the holiday, a very uniquely American holiday. And it's going to give me an opportunity that I've not been able to do in my broadcast career, whether it be in television, whether it be on the radio shows. I've never been able to pay tribute or give homage to a mentor. Mentors. I've never. This person doesn't even know who I am. So mentor is probably the wrong term. Somebody who has inspired me, not only professionally, not only as an American, but also as a conservative. All three aspects, and I'll get to him in a minute. But Thanksgiving, what does it mean to all of us? Well, hopefully you guys can share that with us at chrissalcedo.com, ChrisSalcedo.com. You can leave a voicemail, or you can leave a regular email if you choose to do so, or instantaneous feedback on Twitter at ChrisSalcedoTX. So, Thanksgiving, what does it mean to us? Well, that was my first experience, the Peanuts gang. You know, if you think about it, a lot of the Peanuts offering, Charlie Brown, the Great Pumpkin Charlie Brown for Halloween, the Charlie Brown Thanksgiving, and the Charlie Brown Christmas, they all embodied wonderfully the essences of the holidays, as seen through the eyes of a child. In case you guys don't know the story, it's Charlie Brown, and he's about ready to go to Grandma's house in the afternoon for the traditional Thanksgiving dinner, but all of a sudden, all of his pals start inviting themselves over for Thanksgiving dinner, but he's not going to be there. So he decides to put on a shindig all by himself before he has to leave for Grandma's house. Well, it doesn't exactly turn out the way he planned, but at the end, Grandma invites all the kids to come over as well. The true spirit of giving, the true spirit of Thanksgiving, brotherhood, and such, and also generosity. Now, for the rest of us in the grown-up world, it means gathering around a table, not maybe seeing for the first time in the year family and friends coming over, and maybe even perfect strangers. Maybe you have somebody that you work with that you invite over to your place because they didn't have a place to go. That's very American. It's part of who we are here in this country. And there's another aspect of this that often gets overlooked: the Thanksgiving part. Who are we giving thanks to? We know what we're giving thanks for: our abundance, our prosperity, our ability to feed our families at bottom. But who are we giving thanks to? We are giving thanks to Almighty God, and I don't want to lose sight of that, for all of the blessings He has given us here in this country, because we had progenitors who actually saw the wisdom in a government of, by, and for the people, in a free society, in the lessons learned from the mistakes of the past. So that leads us to the origins of Thanksgiving. Now, you guys know the story that many of you were taught inside of school. The story that I learned when I was a kid, and perhaps you learned when you were a kid, not exactly the truth. And this leads me to the homage. Someone who's meant so much to me as a conservative, someone who's meant so much to me professionally speaking, and in television and radio, and someone who has inspired me as an American. His name is Rush Limbaugh. He doesn't know my name, and I have never had an opportunity in all of my broadcast career, save here on the Vida Television Network, to actually do something to pay tribute to what he's done. And every single year, Rush reads this this excerpt from his book, which basically highlights the first Thanksgiving, what it's really about. It wasn't about the Pilgrims having a couple of rough winters and then being saved by the Indians. There was something more going on here, though there was a lot of learning going on from the Native Americans here in the colonies by those who settled from Europe. So what I'm going to do is read this excerpt from Rush Limbaugh, so maybe you guys can get a better understanding of what the true history is, and it'll give me a chance to thank Rush personally for this. So I'm going to build my fake fire. There it is over my shoulder, and I'll tell you guys the story. The story of the Pilgrims. It begins in the early part of the 17th century. The Church of England under King James. Oh, by the way, I'm reading this. I don't have it all memorized, so that's why you see my eyes drifting down to the page in front of me. The Church of England under King James was persecuting anyone and everyone who did not recognize its absolute civil and spiritual authority. Those who challenged ecclesiastical authority and those who believed strongly in freedom of worship were hunted down, imprisoned, and sometimes executed for their religious beliefs in 1600 England in the 17th century. A group of separatists first fled to Holland and established a community. After 11 years, about 40 of them agreed to make a perilous journey to the New World, where they would certainly face hardships, but at least the promise they could live and worship God according to the dictates of their own consciences. It's a powerful belief. The belief in freedom of religion to engage in this kind of activity in order to be able to do it, to be able to cross an ocean to a place where you have no idea what to expect. I mean, wow. On August 1st, 1620, the Mayflower set sail. It carried a total of 102 passengers, including 40 pilgrims led by William Bradford. On the journey, Bradford set up an agreement, a contract that established something. I'm going to depart a little bit from script here. It established something, folks, that you all know about. Socialism. And just and equal laws for all members of the new community, irrespective of their religious beliefs. Where did the revolutionary ideas expressed in the Mayflower Compact come from? Well, it came from our Bible. The Pilgrims were a people completely steeped in the lessons of the Old and New Testaments. They looked to the ancient Israelites for their example. And because of the biblical precedents set forth in Scripture, they never doubted that their experiment would work. They were people with incredible faith. The journey to the New World was a long and arduous one. And when the Pilgrims landed in New England in November, they found, according to Bradford's detailed journal, a cold, barren, desolate wilderness. There was no friend to greet them, he wrote. There were no houses to shelter them. There were no inns where they could refresh themselves. And the sacrifice they had made for freedom was just the beginning. During the first winter, half the Pilgrims, including Bradford's own wife, died either of starvation, sickness, or exposure. When spring finally came, Indians, the Native Americans, indeed taught the settlers how to plant corn, fish for cod, and skin for beaver coats. Life improved for the Pilgrims, but they did not yet prosper. This is important to understand because this is where modern American history lessons often end. That's where the traditional story of Thanksgiving ends. The Indians helped them. They learned how to plant corn. They had a big feast, and that's what we celebrate today. No. Thanksgiving is actually explained in way too many textbooks as a holiday for which the Pilgrims gave thanks to the Indians for saving their lives rather than what it was. Thanksgiving was a devout expression of gratitude to God. And if you doubt that, go look at George Washington's first Thanksgiving proclamation, when Thanksgiving became a national holiday because of George Washington. You cannot escape the fact that it was a national holiday rooted in thanking God for America, for the blessed nature of our country. And this is exactly what the Pilgrims did. That's what they were thankful for. Here is part of that speech that has been omitted from the traditional textbooks. Or here is the part that has been omitted, rather, from the traditional textbooks and was omitted when, this is Rush talking, when I was in school, me too. The original contract the Pilgrims had entered into on the Mayflower, they had merchant sponsors. They didn't have the money to make the trip themselves. There were sponsors, merchants in Holland and London, who paid for everything. They had to be repaid. So the contract that they had called for everything they produced to go into a common store. This is where the socialism, aside here, folks, this is where the socialism happens. Everything they had went into a common store, and each member of the community was entitled to one common share. All of the land they cleared and the houses they built belonged to the community as well. It didn't belong to any individuals, and everything they produced, they were going to distribute it all equally. Sound familiar? Everyone would get the same, and everybody would be the same. All of the land they cleared and the houses they built belonged to the community. Nobody owned anything. They just had a share in it. It was a commune, people. It was a commune. It was a Humboldt County, California commune. That's Rush, not me. Humboldt County commune in California, minus the weed. It was the forerunner to the communes we saw in the 60s and 70s out in California with organic vegetables. Bradford, who had become the new governor of the colony, recognized that this form of collectivism was as costly and destructive to the Pilgrims as the first harsh winter after settlement. He decided to take bold action. Bradford assigned a plot of land to each family to work to manage, and it was theirs. Let me stop here for a moment. That was a hard lesson for William Bradford to learn, that the commune wasn't the way to go. So this was, in Bradford's day, I mean, I know it seems kind of commonplace to Americans today, but in Bradford's day, this is something that's revolutionary. Nobody had ever conceived of non-communal living, or I shouldn't say that. The Magna Carta had some of the original seeds here, but it was still a rarity in the world in general. Private ownership that didn't belong to a king or a dictator or a despot. Back to Rush. Whatever they produced was theirs to do whatever they wanted. Sell it, keep it, use it, but it was theirs. Well, you know what happened? This was, in effect, the unleashing of the power of competition and the marketplace. The Pilgrims had discovered and experimented with what could be described today as socialism, and it failed miserably. It didn't work. Drastic action taken by William Bradford got rid of it. What Bradford and his community found was that the most creative and industrious people had no incentive to work any harder than anybody else, because no matter what you produced, you got the same as anybody else. If you didn't produce anything, you still got the same amount as everybody else got. They were trying to refine it, perfect it, and reinvent it. The rest of the world's been doing this since the beginning of time. But there's no way to refine and perfect it. He's talking about socialism. They dumped it. The Pilgrims dumped socialism. What Bradford wrote about this social experiment should be in every school child's history lesson. Here's the quote. The experience that we had in this common course and condition, tried sundry years, that by taking away poverty and bringing community into a commonwealth would make them happy and flourishing as if they were wiser than God, Bradford wrote. For this community, so far as it was found to breed much confusion and discontent and retard much employment that would have been to their benefit and comfort. For young men that were most able and fit for labor and service did repine, that they should spend their time and strength to work for other men's wives and children without a recompense. What this means, folks, is that men were required to work for other people's wives and kids for their benefit and not their own, without any compensation. If another guy worked harder, he got the same. If another guy worked less, he still got the same. And that's what Rush explains next. What he's saying is, why would we bust our butts working for people not doing anything? It didn't work. It was a resounding failure. Why should you work for other people when you can't work for yourself? Now, what is Rush articulating here, and what are the Pilgrims discover? They discovered something that we call human nature, that working in our own self-interest really motivates us, and it does. From his journal, the Pilgrims found that people could not be expected to do their best work without incentive. So what did Bradford's community try next? They unleashed the power of good old free enterprise. And by the way, before I go on from that, there are 4 economic systems out there. And I know you guys have been told that there are 3, communism, socialism, and capitalism. There is a 4th. It's free enterprise. Free enterprise is the highest expression, the most pure expression of men getting compensated for the work they put in. Communism, the worst. Free enterprise is the best. And America has a capitalist system. And many in the conservative movement, like me, would love to see us get more free enterprise and less capitalistic. Anyway, back to Rush. They let every family have its own plot of land to work, and they were permitted to market the products, the crops that they grew, and the result was, Bradford wrote, this had a very good success, for it made all hands industrious. So as much more corn was planted than otherwise would have been, I have to ask, but you guys can see where this is going. That this is where Rush took a break. And as a matter of fact, I think we'll take a break right now here on the Chris Salcedo Show Worldwide. Hear how it all ends coming up next on the Vida television network. Be right back. Welcome back to the Chris Salcedo Show Worldwide on the Vida television network. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. Fake fire? Check. Glad you made it back. I've got to tell you guys, I don't even know if I've told you guys this story on the air before, where I got my start. I got my start reading news in radio, ended up doing news on television, and, well, basically kind of returned to my roots after I got out of news on TV and on radio. I wanted to do conservative talk radio, not only conservative television, but conservative talk radio as well. And one of the big inspirations was Rush Limbaugh. And not that your Liberty Loving Latino has much in common with Rush Limbaugh other than our common Americanism and our common humanity and our conservatism. But he has been an inspiration to me, not only because of the talent that he brings. I mean, folks, he never graduated from college. Never graduated from college, but is one of the smartest individuals in our country. Informed analysis and informed opinion, and pays attention to the stuff. And you know what? Actually, it was him and a couple of other mentors that I knew personally who had inspired me, and I would inspire all of you who may be aspiring to be in media. Be as well-read as you possibly can be, and find out what's going on to the best of your ability, because it'll aid you immensely. And I remember what I was doing the first time. I was driving in the car. I was in news when I heard Rush Limbaugh talk about this story about the first Thanksgiving and what it really was. And it was one of those transformational moments in my life when I realized that we can't always trust what we're being taught in certain institutions. I also learned this on my own accord when I took an American Indians course in college from a guy who actually wrote the book. I remember his name to this day. His name was Jerry Beto, out at Grossmont College out there in San Diego. It was Grossmont's in a little I think it's technically La Mesa or El Cajon, borderline community out there. Anyway, it was a community college. And Jerry Beto gave me an instruction about Native American Indians and the true story that busted a lot of the myths that I had learned in high school. And right around this time, generally speaking, is when I heard Rush's first take on this. And it's eye-opening. And so I would encourage all of you to not only do some digging on your own, but also inspire your kids to do some digging on their own. Let me finish up the treatise here by Rush Limbaugh. Again, these are excerpts taken out of one of his books. And you can find this probably on his website as well. So the result of free enterprise, after the Pilgrims had tried socialism, well, William Bradford wrote about it. This had a very good success, for it made all hands industrious. So as much more corn was planted than otherwise would have been. Bradford doesn't sound like a committed leftist at that point, now does he? So the Thanksgiving that was had, Pilgrims found that they had more food than they could eat themselves. Now, this is where it gets really good, folks. If you're laboring under the misconception that I, meaning Rush Limbaugh, was as I was taught in school, or it was, I should say, as I was taught in school. So they set up trading posts and they exchanged goods with the Indians. That's what you were taught. In other words, there was capitalism going on, says Rush Limbaugh. So understand the progress here, ladies and gentlemen. The Pilgrims got private ownership, created a marketplace, and all of a sudden they had more stuff than they knew what to do with. So they started trading with the other indigenous people, the Native American Indians. In other words, there was capitalism going on, writes Rush. There was buying and selling going on. There were profits. A group of people arrives on a boat, committed to being equal and the same. It fails. They end up turning out industrious activity, creating that by virtue of competition and being able to keep what you produce. Simple, huh? A lot of this stuff could inform our debate today, too. They produced more than they needed. They ended up setting up trading posts. They exchanged goods with the Indians. And the profits finally allowed them to pay off their debts to their sponsors, the merchants back there in London and in Holland, who had supported them. The success and prosperity of the Plymouth settlement attracted more Europeans and began what came to be known as the Great Puritan Migration. In other words, the Pilgrims had such overwhelming success at growing their community, word spread all the way back to England, and it began this humongous migration of people to the United States. Remember, the Pilgrims preceded the founding of this country by hundreds of years. They really were the ones that got our nation started and showed how it could be done. And it was. I don't want to use the word rich, he says. It was so plentiful. This was what they were thankful for. They thanked God for the guidance found in the Bible for restructuring their community and shared their bounty with the Indians, who did teach them how to do the things they didn't know how to do, basically be farmers. And that is the true story of Thanksgiving, according to Rush Limbaugh. And I remember where I was when I heard that, as I told you guys, and it's a testament to the greatness of this country. It is a testament to who we are as human beings. Now, my own take. Now that I've given a proper homage to the great Rush Limbaugh, Thanksgiving is a celebration that is uniquely ours. I know Canada has one, but they arrived at it through different circumstance. Not to don't get me wrong, I'm not belittling in the least the Canadian Thanksgiving. I'm just saying that Christmas is rightly shared with the entire world. The birth of Christ, the Savior of man. But Thanksgiving is uniquely ours as a community in America. And there are lessons to be learned, historical lessons that should not be so casually dismissed. Yeah, I was having a conversation with the family as we were preparing for Thanksgiving. And we got into this conversation about how how there are theories out there about the origins of man, about how we took a huge evolutionary step forward. And there are other theories out there that say that man has been at a higher level of sophistication and technological advancement than we ever had been before. And that we may have already done all of this. I mean, it's crazy to think. But this lesson that the Pilgrims taught us, I don't think it ought to be forgotten. And I think today, as we look at our political debate, certainly as we look at the politics of our country, and I'm not trying to be political at all, both political parties seem to share this affliction, a loss of understanding about the genesis of this country and truly what makes us free, truly what makes us prosperous. And that is a open economic system, a free enterprise system, not one beholden or behooven to government or cronies in government, and one not behooven to special interests, not behooven to capitalists. That's why I said earlier in the program that I hope that America can pivot and continue to evolve, not devolve, back towards socialism and collectivism, but evolve up to free enterprise. That's what part of this program is about. We recognize here on this program that Cuba is not prosperous. They were. They became indigent and backward and wanting when they adopted a collectivist mindset, communism. Venezuela, they had all the riches in the world with their oil-filled nation, and they squandered it. Milton Friedman, who was an economist, once said that if you put government in charge of the Sahara, sand itself will become scarce. That was his way of saying that a nation's economy is best left to its people, not to its government. It's best left to industrious people. Free enterprise. No such thing as too big to fail. No such thing as corporate bailouts. No such thing as individual bailouts. People have a responsibility for themselves, and an abundance, well, when you get the abundance, you get America. You get a people willing to share in that abundance. And there's no greater evidence in my mind anyway than that looking at Thanksgiving and seeing what we do. That is going to do it for the Chris Salcedo Show tonight, folks. Get in touch with the program. When we get back from the holiday, we have a best of show tomorrow. ChrisSalcedo.com, ChrisSalcedo.com. You can leave voicemail or email there, or go for instantaneous feedback on to Twitter at Chris Salcedo TX. Happy Thanksgiving. I hope that you have a truly safe and blessed one. Prayers ahead as we look to the holy season of Christmas for you and your family. And we'll see you next time on the Chris Salcedo Show Worldwide on the Vida Television Network.